What if I told you that the biggest problem with your time isn't that you have too little of it? Did you know that the real reason you always feel exhausted, behind schedule, or like you're never doing enough has nothing to do with a lack of discipline? There is an illusion that the modern world has planted in your mind, a lie so accepted, so often repeated, that most people will die without ever questioning it. And this lie is destroying your energy, your creativity, and more than anything, it's consuming the most important years of your life. But more than 1,000 years ago, on the other side of the world, the Japanese already knew this. They already had the answer, and that answer will completely change the way you see time and the way you live. In the United States, people work an average of 1,591 hours per year. In Japan, that number reaches almost 1,100 hours, and yet the Japanese have created one of the most balanced and sustainable philosophies of life in the world. In fact, in some regions of Japan, people work tirelessly. But if we analyze centuries-old regions of Japan, such as Okinawa, we will see a different pattern. How did these people manage to build such a profound culture around rest, presence, the beauty of the moment, and longevity? The answer isn't about working less, it's about having a completely different relationship with what we call time. Researchers at Harvard University published a study that followed more than 4,000 adults over 15 years. The result was surprising. The people who reported the greatest life satisfaction were not the most productive. They were the ones who felt the most fulfilled, gifts in the activities they carried out. No more time, more presence. This is what the Japanese call mastering time, not filling every second, not running faster, but learning to dwell time in a completely different way. And today, you're going to hear Max's story. A 23-year-old American who experienced firsthand what it means to be trapped in this situation and what happened when he accidentally discovered Japanese teachings that nobody teaches you in school. Chapter 1. The Trap of Being Busy. Max woke up every day at 5:47 in the morning, not because he needed to, but because he had read somewhere that the most successful people in the world woke up before 6. He had a list, a huge list, with tasks color-coded, divided into time blocks with alarms every 25 minutes, using the Pomodoro technique, which he had also learned from some other video. Max was, as far as anyone from the outside could see, incredibly organized. He would wake up, meditate for 10 minutes because he'd heard it increased productivity, then go for a 30-minute run because he'd read that morning exercise improved focus, have a meticulously planned breakfast, and at 7 a.m. sharp he was in front of the computer, ready to start the day. He was studying digital marketing. He wanted to start his own business. He had short, medium, and long-term goals. He had spreadsheets, he had podcasts, he had courses. And yet, every time night came, Max would lie down with the same heavy feeling in his chest, the feeling that I hadn't done enough. It didn't matter how many tasks he had completed. It didn't matter how hard he had worked. There was always one more thing that should have been done, always an item on the list left over, always a version of himself that was one step ahead and that he could never reach. At 23 years old, Max was exhausted, and the scariest thing of all is that he didn't know why. Although on a Thursday in October, everything fell apart. Max had an important presentation that day. He had spent the last 3 days preparing each slide, rehearsing each sentence, timing every part of the presentation so that it would fit exactly within the allotted time. But that morning, when he opened his computer, he realized he had saved the wrong file. 3 days of work, 6 hours of sleep a night, enough caffeine to fuel a truck. All lost. He stood motionless for almost 2 minutes, staring at the screen. Then he closed the computer. He left the apartment and simply started walking. He walked for hours, aimlessly, without headphones, without podcasts, without audiobooks, just walking. It was during this walk that Max passed by a small bookstore on a street he had never explored before. In the window, among old books and worn bindings, was a book with a simple title, handwritten on a yellow piece of paper glued to the cover: The Time of the Samurai. He doesn't know how to explain why he went in. He doesn't know how to explain why he bought the book, but he bought it. And in the following days, while trying to reconstruct his lost work, Max began to read. Chapter 2. The Secret that nobody teaches. The first thing Max read that completely stopped his thinking was this: modern man treats time as an enemy to be defeated. The samurai treated time as a master to be respected. He reread that sentence 3 times, because he realized that this was exactly the relationship he had with time, a war. Each day was a battle to beat the clock, to do more, consume more, produce more, and wars, by definition, exhaust those who wage them. The book introduced a concept that Max had never heard of: Ma. Ma doesn't have a direct translation into English or any Western language. It's usually translated as space or pause, but that doesn't capture the depth of its meaning. Ma, as I've explained in other videos on this channel, is the interval. It's the silence between musical notes that gives meaning to the melody. It's the space between words that allows for understanding. It's the pause in breath that sustains life. For the Japanese, Ma does not mean the absence of something. The Ma, it is something. It is a presence in itself. And the book said something that turned Max's world upside down. An agenda without Ma isn't productivity. It's self-inflicted violence. Chapter 3. The First Teaching. Ma. Max began to look at his own schedule as if he were seeing it for the first time. He saw an endless sequence of colored blocks, no real pause, no empty space that wasn't immediately filled with some useful activity. Even rest periods were scheduled with purpose, rest to recover productivity. He wasn't resting. He was recharging like a battery, only to spend it all again. The concept of Ma comes from Taoism and has been deeply absorbed into Japanese culture. This concept appears in architecture. Traditional Japanese houses are designed around emptiness, open spaces, not walls. It appears in music. The composer Toru Takemitsu was famous for using silence as an instrument. It appears in martial arts. An effective strike in karate begins with Ma, the interval between movements. And for the samurai, Ma was a matter of life or death. A warrior who didn't know how to inhabit the intervals, who didn't know how to be fully present in the space between actions, was a dead warrior. Because it was in the Ma that the samurai observed. He breathed. He saw what his opponent was going to do before to do. Max read about Miyamoto Musashi, perhaps the greatest swordsman in Japanese history. And Max thought, those who don't know Ma don't know life. He picked up his planner, and for the first time, instead of filling in the empty spaces, he protected them. Chapter 4. The Second Lesson. Ichigo Ichie. A few weeks later, Max was in his neighborhood cafe when something strange happened. He was reading the book with his coffee beside him when he realized he hadn't tasted the coffee. He had simply drunk it, automatically, while reading, while thinking, while planning. How long have you been doing this? He looked at the nearly empty cup and felt a strange pang in his chest, a kind of mourning. For all the coffees I had drunk without tasting them, for all the mornings that had passed while his mind was elsewhere. That day, he read about Ichigo Ichi. Ichigo Ichie is the principle that each moment, each encounter, each conversation, each experience is completely unique and will never be repeated. Not as an empty motivational phrase, but as a physical and philosophical reality. The concept comes from the Japanese tea ceremony. The masters taught that each ceremony should be performed as if it were the only time in a lifetime. Not the last, not the best, but the only one. The host prepared every gesture, every movement, every detail as if that experience could never be repeated. Because I couldn't. The philosopher Sen no Rikyu, considered the greatest tea master of the 16th century, taught his disciples, meet each person as if it were the only possible encounter between you, because in a way, it is. Max closed the book and remained silent for a long moment. He realized he had spent the last few years living on the present, never present, always thinking about the next block on the agenda, the next task, the next goal. And as he raced toward the future, the present, the only place where life truly happens, slipped through his fingers. He picked up the cup, he ordered another coffee, and this time he drank each sip with complete attention. It was, he said later, the best coffee of his life. Chapter 5. The Weight of Speed. But learning these concepts didn't change Max overnight. In the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Max began to feel guilty for slowing down. Every time he took a break, a real break, without checking his phone, without planning, without optimizing, a voice inside him said, "You're wasting time. Your competitors are working on it now. You're going to fall behind." He recognized that voice. It was the voice that Western culture had instilled in him since childhood. The voice of hustle culture. Do sleep when you're dead. Do rise and grind. And that voice was convincing, because the entire society around Max confirmed that voice. His friends did the same. Social media celebrated the same. Resting was laziness. Taking a break was weakness. Emptiness was waste. And then Max read the third teaching, and that's what broke that voice forever. Harahachi Bu. It's a principle from Okinawa, the Japanese island that has one of the highest concentrations of centenarians in the world. People in Okinawa stop eating when they are 80% full. Not stuffed, not satisfied. 80%. Why is that? Because the human body takes about 20 minutes to register satiety. When you eat until you're full, you've actually overeaten. You just didn't know it yet. But Max wasn't interested in dieting. What caught his attention was the note the book added right below the explanation. Harahachi Bu can be applied to everything. Training, work, concentration. Never push yourself to the limit. Always keep 20% in reserve, because whoever exhausts their reserves in a single day has nothing left for tomorrow. Max froze at that sentence. He had always operated on a 100% or 120% model. If he was working, he worked to the limit. If he was studying, he studied until he couldn't absorb anymore. If he was exercising, he exercised to exhaustion. And then he wondered why he was always tired. The Harahachi Bu revealed something that no modern productivity guru had been able to say clearly. Sustainability isn't about giving everything you have every day. It's about giving enough so that tomorrow you still have something to give. What Max was discovering in the yellowed pages of an old book, modern science was confirming in laboratories. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker, author of Why We Sleep, documented over decades of research something that the culture of hustle I preferred to ignore it. The human brain doesn't work linearly. It works in cycles, and periods of apparent inactivity, rest, daydreaming, emptiness are biologically essential for memory consolidation, creativity, and decision-making. In other words, the ma that the Japanese have practiced for millennia is neurologically, when the brain does its most important work. Walker wrote, "Rest deprivation is not a badge of honor. It's a failure of management, of energy, of attention, and of life." Psychologist Ellen Langer of Harvard University, who has dedicated decades to the study of mindfulness, discovered that people trained to pay full attention to what they are doing in the present moment not only experience greater satisfaction, but also better performance in complex tasks. Ichigo Ichie wasn't mysticism. It was neurology, and a study published in Journal of Occupational Health Psychology. He followed workers in Japanese companies that adopted the Harahachi Bu practice applied to the workday and discovered that these workers had, on average, 34% fewer cases of burnout and maintained high performance for much longer periods than colleagues who operated at their limit. Max read the data and felt something unusual, relief, as if someone had finally given him permission to be human. Chapter 6, the fourth lesson. Max almost ignored. But there was a fourth lesson in the book, and Max almost skipped it. I was on the second to last chapter, and the title was simple: Shyisen and Monoaware. He already had a lot to process. 3 principles that were transforming his way of thinking. But something made him continue, and it was this lesson that changed everything at once. Shizen, it means naturalness. It comes from Taoism and has been deeply incorporated into Japanese philosophy. In the context of time, Shizen means aligning your actions with your natural rhythms rather than forcing productivity against them. The Tao Te Ching says, "A wise man does not fight against the river. He learns where the river flows. The samurai studied the natural cycles with the same seriousness with which they studied combat techniques. They knew that there were moments of clarity and moments of fog, moments of strength and moments of weakness, and that trying to fight at those wrong times was not courage, it was folly. Max began to realize that there were moments in his day when his brain was absolutely on fire, creative, focused, quick. And there were moments when every word he wrote seemed to come out wrong, every decision seemed misguided. And what did he do during those bad times? He pushed harder. He drank more coffee. He put on more pressure. Shizen said, but it was Monoaware, which finally made Max sit on the floor of his apartment and reflect deeply on life. Monoaware is one of the most profound and untranslatable concepts in Japanese culture, loosely translated as the gentle melancholy of things or the awareness of impermanence. He describes the feeling that arises when you realize that each moment is unique, precisely because it is fleeting. Cherry blossoms, the famous sakura. They are the ultimate symbol of this concept. The Japanese do not celebrate them, despite they only last a few days. They celebrate because, furthermore, the beauty of the sakura is inseparable from its impermanence. And the book ended with a sentence that Max underlined 3 times. The man who doesn't realize that time is passing never learns to value it. The man who realizes too much is paralyzed by anxiety. The wise man realizes, bows before it, and then lives with tranquil urgency. Quiet urgency. Not the frantic urgency Max knew, not the kind that burned his eyes at 2 a.m. in front of the computer, but an urgency born of love, the love for this moment, which exists now, which will not exist tomorrow in the same way. And suddenly, Max understood. It wasn't about doing more. It was about being fully present in what you do. It wasn't about controlling every second. It was about dwell every second. It wasn't about beating time. It was about to be time. Chapter 7. Max's Transformation. In the following months, Max made simple changes. Not dramatic, not revolutionary. Simple. He added Ma to her schedule, deliberately empty spaces that no task could occupy, not to recharge and get back to work, just to exist, to think without a destination, to let silence be silence. He began practicing Ichigo Ichi in conversations, mainly with his mother, who called every week and whom he always answered with one ear while the other was on the computer screen. He started stopping everything when he called, to really listen. And it was in one of these conversations that she told him a story from his childhood that he had never heard before and that made him laugh for minutes. He adopted Harahachi Buu at work, finishing his shift when he had 80% energy left, not when he was at his limit. And he discovered that the next day he showed up with more enthusiasm, more creativity, and more energy than he had ever had working to exhaustion. He stopped fighting against his natural rhythms. He began to observe when he was in a state of flow and when he was stuck, and instead of forcing things during bad times, he used those moments for mechanical tasks, for rest, for aimless walks. And Monoaware? That was the hardest. It required Max to look at things he preferred not to look at. The passing of years, the finiteness of experiences, the fact that his father was getting older and that each visit now had a different weight. But when he embraced it, not as depression but as truth, something changed. He began to truly appear in his own life, no longer as a manager trying to optimize every process, but as someone who knew deep down that this moment, this specific one, this now, would not return. And that's why anything was valid. Chapter 8. Recap and what this means for you. Let me recap what we've seen today because each of these teachings carries a different weight when you really stop to think about it. Ma. Space, interval, pause, reminds us that emptiness is not absence. It is presence of another nature. An agenda without Ma is an instrument being played without any pause. It is not music, it is noise. Ichigo Ichi. This moment, which will never happen again, challenges us to step out of autopilot and treat each experience for what it truly is, unique, unrepeatable, and therefore precious in its own way. Hara Hachi Bu. The wisdom of the 80% liberates us from the tyranny of exhaustion as proof of effort. You are not more valuable because you are more tired. You are more efficient when you preserve what you have. Shyisen, flowing with nature, invites us to stop fighting against ourselves, to observe our rhythms, to work with them, not against them. To recognize that we are not machines that produce linearly, but living beings that function in cycles. And Monoaware. The beauty of impermanence gives us the rarest thing that exists: urgency without anxiety. The recognition that time passes, that each moment is unique, and that this is not a threat. It's an invitation. Max's problem wasn't that he was short on time. It was that he was never there, within from the time I had, and maybe that's your problem too. It's not a lack of time. It's not a lack of discipline. It's not a lack of planning, but a lack of presence, a lack of a lack of Ichigo Ichi, a lack of the wisdom to know when to stop, when to slow down, when to simply be. The Japanese samurai, with all their battles, their codes, their responsibilities, understood something that takes us a lifetime to learn. You cannot own time, but you can learn to inhabit it. And to inhabit time, to truly inhabit it, begins with a choice you can make now, at this very moment, the choice to stop running from the present towards a future that, when it arrives, you'll also want to escape. The choice to be here, completely here. The man who rushes through every moment of his life comes to the end without having lived any of them. Zen teaching. So let me ask you something before you close this video. In how many moments today were you completely present? Not just physically there, but within right now, with complete attention, with among my thoughts, with Ichigo Ichi in my heart. If the answer is few or none, then perhaps that's the best starting point you could have. Not tomorrow, not on Monday, not when I have more time, now. If this video made sense to you, if at any point you thought that's exactly how I feel, so do one thing now. Click subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications. Because every week I bring you stories and lessons like this, which can change the way you see your own life. And leave a like on this video. That tells me you want more of this content, and it helps me continue bringing these stories to more people who need to hear them. In the comments, tell me, which of these teachings touched you the most deeply? Was it Ichigo Ichi, Harahachi Buu? Tell me below. And if you enjoyed this video, I invite you to watch one of the ones that are appearing on your screen now. You'll certainly gain valuable insights. Each of these videos was made with the same care to help you live with more depth, purpose, and presence. Until the next video. And remember, time is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It just depends on how you choose to learn from it.